Hi, if you're interested in Oriental rugs and other textiles and the cultures that made them past and present, RugTube is the place for you. We welcome collectors, dealers, aficionados, and maybe even scholars to talk about what's new, what's old, ideas, theories, and maybe even a bit of speculation here and there. We at RugTube know real art is the kind you can walk on.
Today, I would like to say a few things about the Oriental rug literature of the early 20th century. This has a lot to do with the state of the market at that time, and a lot to do with collecting fads and fashions. The first book I'd like to consider is The Oriental Rug by W.D. Ellwanger. This book has immense optimism for the future. I'm reading from the preface. That Oriental rugs are works of art in the highest sense of the term, and that fine antique specimens of even modest size have a financial value of $10,000, $15,000, or $38,000 has been recently determined at public auction. At this auction, several nations had a representative voice in the bidding, and the standard of price was fairly established. The value of rugs may have been imaginary and sentimental heretofore. It is now a definite fact, with figures apparently at the minimum. With the maximum may prove remains to be seen. This was written in 1903. It's amazing to think about rugs selling for those prices at this time. But we have to remember this was at the tail end of what some people consider the Gilded Age. Other people might consider the age of robber barons. Rugs were obviously very high-ticket items for connoisseurs. So perhaps relying on their rarity in the general market, they had a cachet that they don't have today, at least among the super wealthy. But what kind of rugs were selling at that price? Again, Ellwanger says, "The Persians are eminently the best rugs to buy. They are unusually finer and more closely woven than the others, and more graceful in design, and seem to show a more refined and aristocratic art. The Kermans would be the first choice, and are to the rug dealer what diamonds are to jewelers, a staple article which must be kept in stock and which finds a ready sale. But even where it is possible to buy a true diamond Kerman, the very catholicity of taste to which diamonds and Kermans appeal detract from their merit in the eyes of those who seek for more individuality." Now, interestingly, this author in 1903 is alluding somewhat to the difference between the city rugs of particular types and perhaps the village rugs or even the nomadic rugs, which have more spontaneity. However, it's clear at this time that it is the city rugs with the refinement and the aristocratic taste that is the main focus of buyers. We can go to this book, Oriental Rugs and Carpets, and it is written in 1910. The author is unclear. It's made by the Review Publishing Company, but it seems to be something of a sales manual. There's a lot to say about Oriental rugs versus other kinds of art. And again, this is from 1910, a little bit later from the book I read before. Again, from the preface, "Unlike paintings, engravings, pottery, and many other products of the arts, the Oriental rug is a comparatively new thing everywhere except the Far East, and consequently, there is not yet in existence a class of private collectors or connoisseurs whose opinion in regard to the intrinsic value of an Oriental rug can be regarded as conclusive. In the absence of such experts, the rug merchants, not all of them, but on the contrary, only a certain number of the principal importers and their agents or buyers, here and in the Orient, form the principal sources of information of practical service to an inquirer. Now, clearly it gives dealers the prime focus. However, it points out something very significant and very interesting, in that there is not yet a body of collectors as there are for other art forms. This is fascinating because today rugs take their rightful place among other high-quality Islamic arts. However, at that time, rugs were a relative newcomer. Then we come to the book of John Kimberley Mumford. His book on Oriental rugs is a watershed in the history of rug publications, particularly because it made information about rugs so much more reliable, so much more vibrant and alive. And the reason is to be found in Mumford's life. John Kimberley Mumford, 1863 to 1926. He was a journalist and a correspondent during the Spanish-American War. He was the author of the Yerkes collection of Oriental carpets, a limited and deluxe portfolio, published in 1911, and of Oriental Rugs, which was first published in 1900. He rode a donkey and camel through the Middle Eastern countries to investigate his topic. Convinced of the inaccuracies of his findings, he returned to Persia just before publication to obtain additional information. We can read from his preface about the proliferation of literature about Oriental rugs. Of course, we know today that there is an incredible proliferation of rug books written by people who may or may not be competent. However, as Mumford states, although around a dozen of books about rugs have issued from American presses in as many years, the author and publishers of this work are pleased to note that, concerning itself with the purely native rugs, it has maintained its status in public favor through all this time. Succeeding books have only amplified its outline. Several times since its first publication, the book has been reprinted, and each fresh supply has encountered an almost undiminished demand. This is writing not from the first edition of 1900, but from a later edition of 1915. It's clear that the general public, not some academic elite, but the general public has an insatiable demand for rug literature. That would certainly be a good condition for the rug market today. However, as some of the literature makes clear, rugs were very much the new collectible at this time. But again, what does Mumford value? It is Persian rugs. From his chapter on Persian rugs, I'll read: canceling from consideration perhaps as many as half a dozen varieties of Caucasian and Asia Minor rugs, well nigh all of the great refinement that remains in the Oriental carpets of the present day belongs to Persia. It is there that the Eastern carpet as an art product had its first home. That is, of course, debatable in the light of recent archaeological finds. And there, unless some sudden and potent saving force intervenes, will be its last. Indeed, Iran is still a major producer of rugs. Mumford's book remained something of a standard go-to book for just about everyone until the book by Arthur Cecil Edwards. This book on the Persian carpet quite simply blew away everything that went before. And the reason is not hard to understand. Mumford did a considerable amount of field work. However, Edwards took it to an entirely different level. I'll read a bit from his life. He's best known for his work, The Persian Carpet, a survey of carpet weaving industry of Persia. It was published in 1953. He died shortly after its publication. He was born in Constantinople in 1881, and in 1909 he married his wife, the American Clara Carey Case. His uncle, James Baker, was one of the founders of the Oriental carpet manufacturers in Smyrna, Anatolia or modern Turkey, in 1907-1908. The company bought and produced Persian carpets for export to the United Kingdom. As an employee, Edwards moved to Hamadan in 1911, where he built and managed his own carpet production facility. There, Edwards took over management of the company and expanded its business activities in the United States. He outsourced carpet production to India in order to reduce production costs. A number of important things emerge from this. First is that the Persian carpet was supreme in the eyes of dealers as a commercial product at this time. Second, already at a very early date, it's clear that the costs of weaving in Iran were higher than in India, and Edwards moved many of his commercial interests, to India, where things could be produced in a Persian pattern, but in a lesser price. His book offers a wealth of information about the designs the public, particularly in Britain and America, wanted to see in their rugs, as well as incredible detail about his personal travels to various regions in Iran to examine carefully the methods and materials of manufacture, as well as the regional patterns that he could see. Given that Iran has undergone incredible modernization in the last decades, this kind of research with this kind of detail is no longer possible. And reading from his foreword, we hear about why he wrote his book. Many books have been written in many languages about Persian carpets, but with few exceptions, their authors have written of the past achievements of the weaver's craft rather than its present activities. Furthermore, writers have been, for the most part, unfamiliar with the vast land where these carpets are woven, with the language and the way of life of the indigenous peoples who produced them, and especially the craft itself, so skilled, so curious, and so varied. Assumption, therefore, has too often served for research, and errors have been repeated with melancholy persistence in successive works. His work, quite simply, remains the source book of Iranian carpets, and will likely do so in the future. However, it is not quite a scholarly work. For that, we'll have to discuss the works of Pope next. Thank you very much.